Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. This is yet another movie and part of my series of doing covering all of the movies of one of my favorite directors and one of the most important directors in our time, Martin Scorsese. So it's been really great. I have done so far. I've done a pretty good batch of movies. I did some reviews on some of Scorsese's films a while back, and so those are on the channel already. So you should check those out. I've done a show on Mean Streets, also Raging Bull. Mean Streets being my favorite film of all time in Scorsese's career. I and I did a few shows where I did one on the most recent one I just did it. I just uploaded is Goodfellas from 1990. Just an amazing film on so many levels. I I just love that movie to death. That's a movie I need to see again. I also did show on The Departed, which is just a fantastic movie. I remember seeing that in the theater. And I also did a show on a movie that out of I feel like out of Scorsese's career, there's two movies I think out of his incredible body of work that, spans decades. And, he just turned 80 years old and he's still with, he's still filled with so much fire and passion as a filmmaker. Killers of the Flower Moon, his latest film, just, an incredible film. So, but two movies, I think, one being Shutter Island, which is a film I feel is a movie that's kind of regarded by a lot of people and critics as being, not really that great of a film. A movie that kind of missed the mark. A movie that went into some new territory and it just wasn't very successful. And I did a show on that on Shutter Island just recently, and I have to say, like, I was kind of one of those people, but I've seen it since then. I own it, and it's changed for me my view of that film, and I actually really like that film a lot. So, but that movie, it's funny in his career because it was probably the most panned movie. It wasn't really embraced by critics. A lot of people, look at it as kind of a misstep and, that it's not a little bit of a misfire in his like long and incredible career. I have come to the realization that I actually really like that movie a lot. I think it's actually an awesome movie. It's changed for me. It's a very different film for Scorsese in some ways, but it's a pretty amazing film. And another movie, and the other thing that's really ironic around the Shutter Island is that movie was actually, on one hand, it's been the most criticized movie of his career in a lot of ways, but it was also his most successful movie out of his entire career, which is interesting because it was also another film between the amazing partnership between him, Scorsese, and Leonardo DiCaprio. Of course, they've made so many fantastic movies together. The Aviator, The Departed, Kings of New York, Killers of the Flower Moon, Shutter Island, and I feel like I'm missing one. But those are some examples of just their long partnership that has just been just incredible. So, and it's I don't know, kind of ironic that the film Shutter Island getting so that one has been the most kind of pan movie and film and the film that's been kind of ostracized to a degree by a lot of people, but at the same time it was his biggest highest grossing commercial release ever. And that film was another, they had worked together previously. I think I believe their first movie that they worked on together, DiCaprio and Scorsese, was Gangs of New York. So so it's interesting that that is kind of how that movie played out. And today's show is on a movie that I feel is out of Scorsese's career is probably and easily the most overlooked movie of his career. Oh, I forgot to mention there is a review of another Scorsese movie that is just a masterpiece, and that is The King of Comedy with Robert De Niro. If you get a chance to check that out, check out that movie. That movie is so damn good. I was blown away by that film. But check that movie out. It came out shortly after. It came out in the early '80s. It came out pretty much right after Taxi Driver, also starring De Niro, of course. But today's show is on a movie out of all of the films that Scorsese has done. Another movie I just remember too is I believe it's The Age of Innocence, and I believe that is also a movie with Daniel Day Lewis. I believe it, and that's been a long time since I've seen that. But today's show is on a movie. I think the biggest or the most overlooked and least talked about and the most underrated film of Scorsese's career. And it's funny because it's been out for quite a few years, and I just saw it recently, probably about a year or two ago. And it's an incredible film, and it's one of those movies that I saw, fairly recently, like the last year or two, but I'd always seen it. I had heard about it, going to Opera House Video, the video shop here in Belfast. That movie had always been on the in the racks, and I'd always seen it, and I was always kind of curious about it. But I just, for some reason, I just always passed on it, and I always continually passed on it. And then one day I was just like, I need to see this, so I did, and I was blown away. I was like, why have I not seen this movie sooner? And that movie is The Silence, and it came out in 2016. And it's a yet again another kind of historical epic drama that Scorsese directed. Of course, he's done many films kind of in that genre. The Aviator, for instance, Gangs of New York. But I feel, and especially Killers of the Flower Moon, his latest film. And again, it's one of those weird things. It was a movie I just kind of passed up on, and it stars Andrew Garfield, Adam Driver, and Liam Neeson. And this film is about two. It takes place in the 1700s, and it's about these two Jesuit priests that go to Japan and basically try to bring about trying to bring the citizens of Japan under the conversion to of Christianity, and it's based, I believe, on a true story, true accounts, and about the hardship that they endured, and the lengths that these Jesuit priests were willing to go in order to bring what they believed was the word of Christ and the gospel of truth, and it goes really deep into the extent to what some of these Jesuit priests went to. And it's an extraordinary movie. It's incredibly powerful. It's a really kind of a depressing film, especially towards the end, without giving anything away. It on one hand, it's a very emotional movie, and it's kind of heartbreaking, but it also shows the extent to what organized religion can do to people, either people who are practicing a particular religion or people who are you know in the business or the art of trying to convert people to religion, and also how religion can really fanaticize someone to where it leads to personal corruption. It's a very interesting true life story about faith and humanity and the unfortunate things that organized religion has brought to humanity. One of probably the most which is another movie I need to really get into. Probably the most controversial movie of Scorsese's career is The Last Temptation of Christ, which I will eventually do. And he has tackled. Scorsese's always had themes of religion and faith throughout a lot of his films. There's always been a thread of that, and a lot of those ties are from his upbringing, Scorsese's upbringing, where growing up in an Italian in a an Italian American household, faith and religion, particularly Christianity, was very much indoctrinated and very much a part of their life and of life during that time. So there's always been a thread of that aspect of growing up that way in a lot of his films. This film really does tackle it pretty aggressively in a lot of ways, but in a really like poetic way. And again, this movie is so good that I was kind of blown away by the fact that I never really have heard much about this film. I don't think it really. I know it got a theatrical release. Came out in 2016, but I don't think it really connected with an audience. And of course, with the cast, Adam Driver and Andrew Garfield being two, very big names in Hollywood, especially around that time. I mean, Adam Driver being in the Star Wars movie, Force Awakens, and Andrew Garfield, of course, being in The Social Network, and also him, he played, took on the Spider-Man movies for a couple of movies. So you had these two actors, and of course Liam Neeson, who is a household name as an actor, but especially Driver and Garfield. During that time, they were especially during that time in the mid 2000 ish period, they were big big names, big names to big success in the box office. So I was really surprised that even that didn't seem to have an impact in getting people to see this movie. I think a lot of it had to do with the subject matter because it is a very serious film, and it is heartbreaking, and it is pretty dark. It's pretty depressing, but it's also I found myself coming away from this film thinking a lot differently about certain things, in that it was not necessarily the film wasn't necessarily interested in, I think, embracing the idea of what faith is, or that faith is a even to a degree an integral part to being human. It really, I felt at the end of the day, it really closely examined that, but it left it up to your own as a being a viewer. It left it up to your own your own devices to make up your own mind, like where you feel faith has brought people, with in regards to religion and spirituality, and taking a cold hard look to see to what lengths people will go in accordance to their beliefs. Very interesting film. It's not really a film of where it's being used to prop up any kind of agenda at all, and it's just such a great film on so many levels. And I think again, like the way I started off this show, I think that this film is probably, out of all of the films that Scorsese has done, I feel like this movie is probably the least talked about, probably the most underrated film that I can think of. Every other film that he has done has gotten to a degree, has gotten some big notoriety to some level, or was in a at some point had a little bit of a spotlight on it. But Silence is one of those films I just feel like it came out and it just kind of disappeared. It might have been the timing of when this film came out, the subject matter. So, but I highly recommend it. It's truly a powerful film. It's a I feel like it's a deeply personal film for Scorsese, but it has this emotional resonance that a film like Kundun has, which is also another film I will be getting into. Another film that's kind of about spirituality, but an amazing film, The Silence. And again, this would be I need to get all of Scorsese's films on Blu-ray because visually this film it's a period piece and the attention to detail is amazing. It's got a lot of the scenes when these two Jesuit priests go to Japan, everything is in Japanese with English subtitles. So it has a very like authentic aesthetic to it, which I'm a big fan of. I love when films I love period pieces, but I love when they go that extra mile not only to build the sets and to put you into these worlds, but especially if it's a foreign speaking country or region, they will use subtitles because I think that even gives it even more of a authentic um, flavor. And this film really puts you into what it must have been like to be living in Japan in the 1700s. Extraordinary. So highly recommend it. 2016, The Silence or Silence. Please check it out. And this is Jason Dean, and we will see you next time. Peace.